evening, ladies and gentlemen. And on behalf of the Village of Cary and the Board of Zoning, Planning, and Appeals, I'd like to hereby call this meeting to order on this Thursday, September the 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. We have a quorum of members, and at this time, I'd like to ask our Director of Community Development, Mr. Brian Simmons, to please call the roll.
Jasper? Nats? Here. O'Loughlin?
Here.
Graziano?
Here.
Kretschmer?
Here.
Williams? Present. Stefani? Here. Corey?
Here. Thank you very much. We invite you to rise with us for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks very much, everyone. So I'll begin with our petitioners. I'm not sure how familiar you are with our process, and so I'll try to step both of you. There's another gentleman that's on the line from McDonald's Corporation. The way we typically do this is that we ask Mr. Simmons to give us an overview of the petition, and then some of the members of the ZPA may have questions for Mr. Simmons. Upon conclusion, we'll ask yourself, you'll be first, to come up to the podium and add any additional comments or color to the petition that you think is appropriate. And again, members of the ZPA may have some questions for yourself. Once we conclude that portion, we do open it up to the public. For those that are unaware that may be listening online, we have a public comment component to the meeting, and so we allow anyone that wants to speak about the petition to offer their comments. Obviously, there's no one here beside yourself in Village Hall, but because it is a hybrid model meeting, there is potentially people online. Once we conclude that portion of the meeting, members of the ZPA may have some questions amongst themselves about the application, and then we take a vote and we deliver the vote back to our elected officials who do, in fact, become the final arbiter of our discussions this evening. So that's our process. And before I move on to an administrative matter, do you have any questions about the process?
No.
Okay. And I want to double check with the gentleman that's online from McDonald's to see if he has any questions before we move into an administrative matter.
No, I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so gentlemen, I know you're well aware of the process related to the approval of minutes. I believe everybody would have received them. So unless there's any objections, I'm just going to ask by a voice vote to approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which related to the swimming pool matter. And those would have been the meeting minutes. Let me make sure I have the date on those.
August 12th.
Is it the 12th? Thank you,
Yes.
Brian. So this would have been back from August the 12th. So via voice vote and general consent, those in favor of approving the meeting minutes from our last ZPA meeting of, not July the 8th, but August the 12th, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. So at this time now, I will call Village Case Number 21, ZPA 07001. The petitioner is Mike and Bonnie Haber. This is a request for a variation to increase the maximum ground floor area of an accessory detached garage from 600 feet to 1,240 square feet, and this relates to section of the code 14.4.3.2 of the UDO. And over to Mr. Simmons for an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The request this evening, as mentioned, is for a variance for a detached garage. Petitioners are seeking a variance to increase the maximum floor area for the accessory structure. Some overview of the property. The property is zoned R2 single-family residential district, and they're seeking approval for the variance for the garage. A little history on the site. The original building was developed back in 1932, and the detached garage that's on the property as of today was constructed in 1975. The existing garage was built prior to our existing zoning regulations, so it's considered a legal non-conforming use, and that it was built prior to our current code limitations of the 600 square foot requirement. The petitioner is seeking to do a 10 by 30 foot addition on the side of the garage to be able to have more of a side-loaded component to the garage and allow for more storage for their vehicles. In total, the expansion would result in a square footage of roughly 1,240 square feet. The pictures you can see on the slide show the location of the garage and also the location of the addition, as well as far as how it would impact the structure. For the request, staff reviewed other history for variances that exist in the area. As previously discussed before this board, there has been a number of variances or larger structures that have been constructed in the area down on Mildred Avenue. This slide kind of highlights some of those structures that have existed and when they were constructed. Most recently, the village board approved a variance for the property at 470 Mildred for a garage roughly the same size of 1,200 square feet. So with the proposed variance, although the existing garage exceeds code, is legal non-conforming, in order to increase the structure, they would need a variance to increase it up to the 1,240 square feet as proposed. As the ZPA is aware, there are various standards that are established within the Unified Development Ordinance that need to be met for the support of a variance, which are summarized in this slide. The petitioner did provide a written response to the standards within their application documents to provide support as far as how they felt their proposed variation complies with the standards. Based off the staff's review of the request and variation history of the neighborhood as far as previous support for variances, staff believes that the conditions in this case have been met and would recommend approval of a variation to increase the ground floor area for a detached garage from 600 square feet to 1,240 square feet for the property located at 451 Mildred Avenue, subject to the conditions that are listed in your staff report. Should the ZPA concur with that recommendation, they should make a recommendation to the village board of the same. In this case, since the variation is above the 20% threshold for relief from the code, this would be a village board final case. I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simmons. Gentlemen, questions for Mr. Simmons? Good evening, Mr. Jasper. All right, so Mrs. Haber, the way this now works is that you may or may not be aware that these meetings get recorded. And so if you'd like to add additional information, you can address at the podium, just state your name and address for the record if there's additional information you'd like to include. That.
I don't think there's anything I can add to that.
All right, very good.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. So this is the time where we would open it up to public comment, and for the record, besides Mrs. Haber, there's no one else assembled amongst the public in Village Hall, and I'm just double checking with Mr. Simmons to see if there's anyone online.
No additional to the next petitioner.
Okay. So Mrs. Haber, I do have one question for you. You notified a number of your neighbors. Did you receive any feedback at all from any of your neighbors?
I sent letters.
I'm sorry, you're going to forgive me, so,
Yep,
yeah, thank
sorry.
you. It's all right.
Connie Haber. I sent letters out. We actually described what we were doing, because you see the variance signs and don't always know what's going on between those variance signs. So we tried to explain briefly what our variance was for and what we're trying to accomplish. We also included both my personal cell phone number and my husband's. He's born and raised in that subdivision, so we pretty much know everybody. We didn't get any response from anybody or any inquiries. They understood what we're doing, and they knew that we'd done an extensive renovation on the house previously, and this is kind of the last leg of our journey to wrap the project up.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Haber. Appreciate it.
Sure.
So, gentlemen, before I go to roll call, I want to make sure that each of you have an opportunity to ask any questions you may have of the petitioner. No? All right, then.
I just have one.
All right, Mr.
Is there some kind of a contest going on Mildred Avenue to see who can get the strangest variance or something? It seems like every other meeting we have Mildred Avenue on the agenda.
It's an old subdivision that started out as cottages in, our garage is extremely narrow, so it just makes it difficult to navigate. I think just the variation, the different houses and the different configurations, there's always something that needs to be addressed, I would imagine.
And everybody's garage is in front of the house instead of in back of it.
Exactly.
Okay, that was just it.
Anything else, Mr. Graziano?
No, I'm good.
All right, gentlemen, before I call a motion, anything else? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of a variation to increase the maximum ground floor area for the detached garage from 600 square feet to 1,240 square feet for the property located at 451 Mildred Avenue, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. And gentlemen, just to make it a matter of public record, I'm going to read in the staff report recommendations. Number one is the proposed expansion to the detached garage shall not reduce existing setbacks from the property's front or interior side property lines. And two, the detached garage should not exceed 1,240 square feet in total ground floor area and shall comply with all other applications of the village requirements for the construction of an accessory structure. So I wanted to read that into the record. So without further ado, Mr. Simmons, would you call the roll?
Nats?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. O'Laughlin?
Yes.
Graziano?
Yes.
Kretschmer?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Jasper?
Here, yes.
Corey?
Yes. So you have a positive recommendation, Mrs. Haber. The way this would work is that I would encourage you to stay in touch with Mr. Simmons. And traditionally, not always, but traditionally, the way this works is that it would get put on the consent agenda. So unless somebody wanted to pull it off, they typically get approved. But Mr. Simmons would be in a better position to answer that question as the meeting draws near. And I'm not sure if this will make the 21st meeting or not.
It'll be on the 21st meeting as we discussed, so not next week, but the following week. And it would be on the consent agenda for that meeting. So as Mr. Corey mentioned, 99% of the time, they're approved without comment. So, but if we can advise in advance if there's any questions that come up.
Okay,
Right.
excellent, thank you all very much.
Thank you, and we'll wish you good luck with your project.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
all right, good evening to you. All right, gentlemen, so without further ado
Mr.
now.
Chairman?
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Simmons, would you prefer I go out to my car to get one of my dozen-plus masks?
It's my understanding, Mr. Jasper, just so that we're formalizing this, is that because of the Illinois mandate that we're required to wear a mask, the reason why mine is pulled down is because it muffles your voice.
Oh, yeah.
So that's,
No, I'm just saying, would you, because of that, do you want me to go get my mask?
I would recommend it.
Okay.
Thank you very
I was in
much.
such a hurry, I just left
Yeah.
without it, so.
Yeah. Unless
Okay,
we
while
have
you
one down
read this
here.
in, I'll be right back.
Sure.
All right, I'm going to move forward, Mr. Jasper, with
Yep.
your agreement with calling the next case, though.
Yep.
All right, so at this time, I will call ZPA case number 2108001. This is, the petitioner will be McDonald's USA LLC, and the request is going to be an amendment to a conditional use for a drive-through restaurant, and this is section 14.2.6 of the UDO, and I'll send it over to Mr. Simmons for an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned, this request is for an amendment to the existing conditional use permit for the drive-through restaurant, which is currently the McDonald's. An overview of the site: the property is zoned B2 Shopping Center Business District. Received original conditional use permit approval back in 1984 when the site was originally developed. And most recently, the site went through an exterior renovation and some site improvements back in 2019 that updated the property. The petitioner, the existing conditions of the site maintain the existing 3,400 square foot restaurant that's been on the property for almost 3 decades. It currently has a one-way circulation around the property in a counterclockwise motion with a single file drive-through lane that has 2 existing ordering stations. After the 2019 renovations, there's only access to the north of the property now. There was an access point that used to go to the main shopping center entrance on the east, which was closed as part of those site improvements. And currently, as of today, there are 29 parking spaces on the property. As proposed, the petitioner is looking to make modifications to the existing drive-through lane. Due to the modifications and the expansion of it to have 2 lanes, it requires an amendment to the conditional use permit because it is intensifying the use on the property slightly. And also with the proposed improvements, there will be the elimination of approximately 7 spaces along Northwest Highway frontage due to the width of the drive aisle in that location in order to maintain access around any vehicles that are in the drive-through lane for other vehicles exiting the property or emergency apparatus as well. As a result, the dual drive-through will provide more efficiencies for the restaurant, to be able to serve more customers and provide more stacking on the property to limit stacking which may occur into the adjacent shopping center. The proposed plans were reviewed by both the fire department and public works departments for their consideration, and they had no objections to the proposal as proposed, believing there's adequate access for other vehicles and emergency vehicles to access and circulate the site. As with all matters that are before the zoning board, there are various standards that need to be met for the conditional use, which are summarized on the slide. The petitioner did provide information as part of their packet as far as how they believe the proposed conditional use, in this case, standards are met for their project, and as such, that information is provided for you for reference. Should the ZPA determine that the various standards have been met in this case, it is recommended that the ZPA recommend approval of an amendment to the conditional use permit for a drive-through restaurant for the property located at 678 Northwest Highway, subject to the conditions that are in the staff report. I'll be happy to answer any questions the ZPA may have.
Thank you once again, Mr. Simmons. So gentlemen, questions for Mr. Simmons? All right, so, I'm sorry?
No,
Okay.
it was just commenting.
So we do have a gentleman that's online with McDonald's Corporation, and sir, you're welcome to add any additional comments or color to the application that you think is appropriate at this time.
My name is Kenneth Sack with Watermark Engineering. I think Brian did a fine job, and I'm available for any questions that you may have.
All right then. So gentlemen, questions for the petitioner?
What was did I miss the reason for, like, why they're doing that?
Okay, so the question is, why is McDonald's doing this? It's my understanding, Mr. Williams, that if you're familiar with the facility, that traffic was backing up and overflowing into the parking lot that's adjacent to Jewel. And so I'll ask the petitioner to comment further, but I think that's the
Like a
emphasis of
complaint from
going from two lane, from one lane with the
Yeah.
two to the one that's now going to go potentially around the corner. And perhaps the gentleman would like to discuss that further that's online from McDonald's.
Yeah, basically, the McDonald's is looking to increase the efficiency and increase the stacking, as you mentioned, for the facility. With the increasing demand for drive-through services, McDonald's, this is pretty common for McDonald's these days. It'd be pretty uncommon actually to find one that doesn't have a double drive-through anymore. So it's mainly for an efficiency standpoint and to increase stacking. And as you said, to decrease the stacking out to the ring road, I'll call it, out into the shopping center.
Thank you very much. So gentlemen, other questions for the petitioner?
Yeah, as I look at the plan, it appears to me that all you're picking up is maybe two additional spaces in the line, because you have two speakers out there now. And is it worth all this effort to add two additional spaces?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, from a stacking standpoint, if you look at, it looks like there's only two cars additional from a stacking standpoint, but you also have to look at where the order points are located. In the existing condition, you have a tandem drive-through, meaning obviously two order stations. Those are closer up to the north, whereas now in the proposed situation, we've moved those order points down around the rear of the building. So that gives us the ability to stack more cars. Instead of just stacking 5 cars back from the existing order points, we can now stack 9 cars back. And then in addition to the stacking, obviously McDonald's has invested a lot of money in these double drive-throughs, and it's really becoming a very important part of their business now to have the double drive-throughs, just because of the efficiency standpoint. Let's just say at the tandem drive-through, if somebody's ordering at the first order point, if they don't move, if they say they have a large order and they don't move up, everybody behind them is still stalled. So it's not real effective. It works a little bit, but it's not super effective. Whereas in the dual drive-through situation, with them being side by side, somebody can place their order, and if they're taking a while, the other person in the other lane can move up and keep the line moving. So it is a matter of efficiency.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Graziano. Thank you, Mr. Sack. Gentlemen, other questions for the petitioner?
I'm just, in looking at the print and then re-looking at it here, the line that they have on the outside of the vehicles, is that a barrier or is that just a definition for the draw?
That's just that's a 4-inch striping. It's just striping.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jasper. Thank you, Mr. Sack. Gentlemen, other questions for the petitioner? All right, so Mr. Sack, did you have any other comments that you wanted to include? Otherwise, I'm going to open it up to the public, and just so you're aware, we're sitting here in Village Hall now, and there is nobody attending any longer in Village Hall, so it's empty.
Okay?
Okay, and I'm just double checking with Mr. Simmons once again to see if there's anybody that's joined us online, and Mr. Simmons is telling me no one has, so we're going to close the public portion of that. And gentlemen, unless you have other questions about this, I'm going to call the motion. Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve an amendment for a conditional use permit for a drive-through restaurant for the property located at 678 Northwest Highway, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And once again, gentlemen, I'm going to read into the record what's being recommended in the staff report. Number one is the amendment to a conditional use permit for a drive-through restaurant shall be granted to McDonald's USA LLC for the property located at 678 Northwest Highway. 2, the proposed improvement shall substantially conform to the plans and exhibits submitted as part of this petition. And 3, any signs proposed for the drive-through operation shall conform to the applicable requirements of the Village Unified Development Ordinance. At this time, I'll ask Mr. Simmons to call the roll.
O'Loughlin,
Yes.
Graziano,
Yes.
Kretschmer,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Jasper,
Yes,
Nats,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes. So, Mr. Sack, you have a positive recommendation, as you may have heard us discuss with the previous petitioner. This will probably go on the consent agenda, but I would encourage you to stay once again in close contact with Mr. Simmons in the event that some question comes up or arises in the context of your application.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and we'll wish you and McDonald's continued success.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. The same to you. All right, gentlemen, so before we conclude our meeting, I'm just going to double check with Mr. Simmons if we have any other meetings coming down the pike that we should be aware of.
We likely will have a meeting in October. I have one case that's pending submittal, and then we'll probably likely will have a text amendment from the village as well. So a meeting in October will be taking place.
So you're thinking that would be the meeting of the 14th?
Yes.
Thank you very much. All right, gentlemen, is there anything else that you'd like to address before I make a request to adjourn? The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, gentlemen.